Then we get into standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone to MTZ Overflow Podcast. I am your host, Cassaundra Thorpe, with the man who listed already all of his social media handles, Reverend Dr. Marcus Allen. Pleasure having you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I never thought I'd be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you know, it's a very long list of people that I asked to come, so a couple other people canceled. That's how you got on here.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Happy Black History Month.
Hey, let's go, Black Power.
Woo! And so, as we are a predominantly black church, or African American, how do we describe ourselves?
It depends. That's what, when I was writing the sermon, I was like, should we African American, black? It doesn't matter to me. I can be black or African American.
But not everybody's African American that's black.
Right, so and people that are black are those who from, some might be Afro Latino, is that how they say it? From the Caribbean islands.
Haitian, Jamaican, or from the country of Africa.
So they can be considered as black, but also Afro-American.
Yeah. So, so Pastor took us on a wonderful deep dive of Black history, and I really like that we take time to talk about. Ooh, that was fun. Black history within our church. I think we are a predominantly black church. We have black people everywhere. But taking that time to really talk about what our history is, because I don't know if everybody knows our history, because it didn't start with slavery.
Right.
One thing that I've been doing on my Instagram is I have been sharing Black history facts.
Every day.
Every day. And you want to know what today's was about?
What was it?
I'm going to tell you, because it was actually pretty good. Okay. I enjoyed it very much. So today's was about there is an inventor. Their name is Dr. James E. West. He invented the foil electric microphone.
Wow. That
has shaped the experiences, and it's in like 90% of all the microphones that we use.
Wow.
So thank you, Dr. James E. West, for your invention, because that allows us to be able to put this podcast together and speak on Sunday. Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yes. Every day.
Yeah.
I put them out.
That's good. That is good.
Because, we've invented a lot. We've done a lot. And so we need to continue to tell that story. And you do a great job with that for us on Sunday. So I'm not going to dive into it, because y'all got to go back and y'all got to listen and read. Well, you can't read the notes I have. Read your Bible. Amen.
Amen.
But let's get into some of these questions. So his large question for us was, why is it important to know whose shoulders you are standing on? And then your first point is, because their faith strengthens our faith. Is this like do as I do type thing? What how did we get to that point?
Yeah, just a brief of the introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Thank you. Carter G. Woodson Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He was the one intentional about making sure that all of America acknowledged the history of African Americans. And I think that is important because in our school systems, even today, they're trying to get rid of Black history. You know what I'm saying? And they act as if, speaking of the history of African Americans in this nation, it causes trauma or pain to people who wasn't a part of it. So if it's a little Johnny in class, little Johnny wasn't the slave owner, so why do he have to hear about it? It's because we need to know this history for ourselves and know where we have come from. I'm appreciative. I did the research on Dr. Carter G. Woodson, because it once was only a week, and then it became a whole month. And yet, and still, no, people really don't acknowledge it for its essence. But I think we, as a people of the African descent, need to be able to honor and look back at that history. And what you're doing on Instagram, I think that's very important to see the inventions, the intuitiveness, the creativeness that African Americans have had in this country with limited resources, with limited funding or no funding, with discrimination, with prejudice, with racism, we still have been able to thrive in this nation and do great work to help this nation become who it is today. And I think in the sermon we state, no, there will be no America without free labor from African descent slaves. You know what I mean? And so Black history is America's history. And for some reason, people still want to attempt to take out of the books, take out of the teaching in the classroom about Black history. And I don't know, when you grew up, the only thing we really learned was Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech, and Rosa Parks.
We learned, I remember this distinctly in my history class my junior year. My teacher said the civil rights movement was one of the biggest important things in our American history, and it was a page and a half. And it started with slavery.
Right.
And then it moved. Slavery was this time, Emancipation Proclamation was this time, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, I think they talked a little bit, Malcolm X.
Yeah, Malcolm X,
and then the civil bus boycott, civil rights movement in the act, and then America went on. The Voting Rights Act, and then America went on.
So we don't hear about redlining. We don't hear about Tulsa. We don't hear about the movie Hidden Figures.
Nope.
With the women who helped put the man on the moon. We don't hear nothing about those types of things. I would suggest to anyone who's watching this, if you ever have the opportunity or the chance to go to Washington, D.C., that you go visit the African American Heritage Museum in Washington, D.C. It starts in Africa from the basement, and it goes all the way up to 2008 with President Obama becoming the president. It is a place that'll have you in tears, and then it'll have you in jubilation. You go from anger to happiness, right? Because
it's an emotional roller coaster.
It's an emotional roller coaster that shows you the history of Black folks in this nation. So why is it important to know the shoulders in which we're standing on? One, because their faith strengthens our faith. One, I start with the biblical standpoint. The biblical standpoint of this text is looking at Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11 is labeled as the Hall of Fame of Faith. And when the Hall of Fame of Faith, the writer first gives the definition of faith. And faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Faith is jumping off the porch and not knowing if it is a foundation to catch you when you land. That's what faith is believing what you're unable to see. And so the writer gives the definition of faith. Then he also said in verse 6, he says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. So if you can't believe that there is a God, right, you won't ever trust that God exists. So you won't never believe in something that you have not seen, felt, or smelt. And so it is impossible to please God without faith. And then the writer, he goes on to begin to give various accounts of what faith looks like in action. And he talks about how God formed the world by his words, and that took faith. By faith, Abel offered a sacrifice. By faith, Enoch walked with God. By faith, Noah built the ark before he had ever seen rain before. And the writer suggests that these witnesses who have already run the race, this great cloud of witnesses who had already run the race, they did it because of faith. And so when we get to the 12th chapter, he says, let us run this race because of this great cloud of witnesses, which are the shoulders of which we are standing on. And the writer is suggesting these people have already gone through what you're going through. And he lets us know that when we step on the track of life, we have a crowd of witnesses. And the witness is someone who has information or knowledge of something, and they can bring to light or confirm something based off what they've seen, heard, felt. And so we all have this. We have this great cloud of witnesses. We have these great giants of people that have gone before us, who have done things at a great level and a higher level. And if we look at the African American community, we have more now than what our ancestors had.
Yes.
And it seems as if they've done more, they did more with what they had than what we're doing right now. They were, you know what I'm saying? And we look at it and it's such, you know, it's heartbreaking because when they were so secluded, and no one wants to live in isolation. No one wants to say, yo, I can't go across this street. I can't go across the track. If I go that way, then I may die. Not because of anything that I have done, but only because of the color of my skin. Yeah. So no one really wants that segregation. You know, some people wants the segregation, but we all wants the integration where we can live and work together, especially as Christians and believers. We want to have that community that we're not judged, as Martin Luther King would say, by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. But however, that's not the case. And so when integration took place, I believe, and I had a hard time recognizing this, I believe that our innovation, a lot of our pride in who we are and what we do as Black people, we missed a lot of that, or we left it behind because we were attempting to integrate and we were attempting to go along and be together with everybody. And so our Black businesses suffered because when we once had Black-owned hotels and only Black people use it, but now Black people can go to the white hotels. Now they leave the Black-owned hotels to support white institutions. And so that is where we are, and I think that's a difficult place for us. And I really would help us to understand this history, right? These shoulders in which we're standing on, people who have gone before us and done the work at a greater level than what we are doing now. We need to know that history so that we can be able to say, let's build on top of it and not just be satisfied with where we are. And that's something I guess I've been trying to preach, that we should always want better. We should always want better. You hear what I'm saying?
I'm listening.
We should always want better. That's in front of, even if things are going great, even it feels as if things are going well, we should be trying to achieve better because we're standing on the shoulders of giants, John Lewis or Ruby Bridges or Madam C.J. Walker. We're standing on their shoulders. Likewise, we're standing on, as Christians, we're standing on shoulders of Paul and Peter and John and the disciples. We're standing on their shoulders because they laid the foundation of our faith. But then we look at us as African Americans or Black people in this nation. We're standing on the shoulders of Medgar Evers. We're standing on the shoulders of Martin Luther King. We're standing on the shoulders of all these great leaders who did great work so that we can have the freedoms and the liberties in which we have today.
Yeah.
And I feel like I talked a whole lot.
Always. But
cap, that's a big cap.
Are you
that's
serious?
A major cap.
Are you?
Let's go. Next question.
So your next point is talking about because their pride should make us proud. But where I struggle with the word pride is it lives in both a positive and a negative space. Right. Pride's one of the 7 deadly sins. Yes. But yet I should be prideful at the same time about the things that I've done. Like what is that balance? What's that sweet spot? Right. Yeah.
We can boast not in who we are, what we have done, but we boast in who God is and what He's done in our lives. And I think this level right here, we look at humility as something that is an awesome trait for a Christian. And for many of us, we fail to even boast of the goodness of God because we don't want to look at being prideful, right? And so we struggle as a church and in our nonprofit even now because we are not out boasting how we're helping the community. Whereas other 501c and other corporations, they're sending out reports, they emailing, this is what we did, this is how many families we helped, here's a family, we've recorded them, telling how we helped them, how we changed their lives. As far as us, we look at that as being boastful or prideful.
Yeah.
And so we don't operate in that lane. But now, since we brought on a 501c and we're going to need funding to be able to service the programs in which we're doing, I feel as if we're a little far behind, and now we got to try to catch up, because we have to express not this is what we did for the betterment of ourselves, to lift ourselves, but it is one of our core values to lift our community. And so you live in that space of taking pride in what you do. You have to take pride in what, because if you're not prideful about what you do or what you have, and that's why you look at sometimes some of the like kids in their rooms, they don't take pride in that room if it's just nasty all the time. If stuff is just thrown all around, they don't appreciate it as they should, because if you appreciate something, you take care of it. And that means you're prideful, you're proud of what you have. And so when you're proud of something that you have, you don't mind, like I think I said Sunday, be proud of what you have and don't allow people to diminish it when they say, I see you got your little job, or you got your little car, or you got your little promotion. Whenever people put little in front of it, it's like to downplay and not celebrate it, right? And so you have to be able to be proud of what you have and who you are. You got to be proud to be Black, right? And you got to be proud to be able to go after things and do things that would make your ancestors proud, because they had a level of pride within themselves, because they were willing to stand and march. Them dudes had on 3-piece suits in Alabama.
What does that mean?
It's hot.
Oh.
And they out there marching. They had kids marching. It takes a level of pride to be able to sit at a lunch counter and be called the N-word and be talked about and be spit on. It takes a level of pride to sit there and not respond and really practice what Martin Luther King, that nonviolence movement. And so looking at their lives, looking at what they were able to contribute, looking at the pride in which they had, it should make us proud, and we should also be have a sense of pride in who we are and take care of what God has given us. And if you and like I said in the sermon, it falls negative and positive emotions in which that we have, but we have to be able to be proud of who we are, what we have, and take care of it as if we are proud of it. And no one can give that to us. Right. That is something that must be come from out of ourselves.
Yeah, it definitely it does, and it takes a space of endurance to do that, right? Like faith without works is dead. You have to be active in it, but also run the race with endurance. How do you build like spiritual or endurance, or even just mental endurance? Like, how do you build that? Physically, it makes sense, right? Like you add in more weight, right? Like you can lift more. You practice with different exercises that are doing similar motion. So then when the heavier weight comes on, it's a little bit easier, to approach versus such like a large number. So it's like, how do we build endurance against systemic racism? Because that's what they were doing. That's what they were fighting against. That's what they were fighting against.
And still, we got to fight against that today. But when it comes to life, when it comes to our faith, we build that level of endurance by one, I think I talked about it earlier in a previous podcast, spiritual disciplines.
Yes.
Spiritual disciplines. Being focused. You remember that?
No, I remember in a Bible study.
I think I brought it up here before.
You bring up a lot of stuff here, so maybe.
You're funny. but spiritual disciplines is being committed to constantly doing something over and over again, even though there may not be an immediate result from doing it.
Yes.
right? And so if I continue to pray, if I continue to study my Bible, if I continue to fast, I continue to give of my service, my time, my funds, and if I continue to do work that God has called me to do, it builds up that endurance in this race that we're running. And so it allows you to keep going, even though sometimes you want to quit. You get tired. That's why Paul says, hey, don't grow weary in well doing. And initially you look at them like, yo, you can get tired from doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You could get tired. Yeah, you can get weary from doing what is right. And sometimes, you know, helping people or being there for folks can weigh on you. It can burden you down because you take on what they have. But if you are being committed to these spiritual disciplines, and then you can be you have that endurance to keep going, to keep running, and stay in the race. When it comes to all this systemic racism, as African Americans, we have to see the system. We have to know it. All right, we got to have knowledge of it, and then we got to figure out how to navigate through it, and be able to ensure that we're doing the right things for us in our community, and then also doing it collectively as a group of people, and not trying to be isolated and doing it by ourselves. And it's always better to run with a group, I think. Because if you fall back a little bit, somebody can come back and get you and motivate you to push a little forward. And so when those types of things, I think it takes endurance comes from trouble, right? If you run, and when you run, then you get a cramp in your side, right? Have you ever had one of those cramps?
Yes.
Pretty hurt pretty bad. But if you stop at the sense of pain, like I was talking about deadlift, when you stop, when you feel a little pain, you'll never overcome that moment when that cramp comes. So when that cramp comes and you continue to run until it passes or whatever, or it stops cramping, that is how you build that level of endurance. But if you quit when you feel a little bit of pain, you'll never build any type of endurance. You'll always get to that point of pain, and then you will quit. And so that's where you got to be intentional of saying sometimes you just got to go past the pain.
Go past the pain.
Yeah, keep on running. Keep on running with endurance.
Making some notes.
Okay. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, because it can be so painful doing the right thing. You just get exhausted. You beat down. Like, you're tired. Like, I had a situation where, I was doing the right thing. I'm bought in. I'm doing the thing. But then I got, like, there was a hiccup. There was a bump, and I'm getting looked at crazy. And I'm like, I'm here, like I'm with you. Why am I getting that attitude, that tension? Like I'm trying to be here, but if you're gonna look at me like everybody else, it could be very discouraging to be like, well, I'm about to act up like everybody else.
No, don't act up like everybody else. You can't grow weary. That's what Paul said. Don't grow.
Paul is in jail. He's getting plenty of rest. Okay.
Don't grow weary with it. That's legit. That is legit, because you can get very frustrated, upset, disappointed, feel let down, feel alone, isolated, when you're doing this work, when you're trying to help others, and it can be a sad place. But Paul said, don't grow weary and well done, because then he says, you shall reap what you have sown if you faint not. Right. So
I reap what I sow if I don't faint.
If you don't give up.
Oh, that's what that means. I'm like, if I don't pass out.
If you don't quit. To faint is to be exhausted. And if you don't give up, then you'll get what you put back in. It may not be in that moment. It may not be immediately, but you'll see the results from what you've done.
Yeah. So using the example, right, because there's people who have been exhausted. You named them earlier, and you name more in the sermon, because their example should make us better. Now, we've been talking about race. We're talking about the race of endurance, the activity of race, and we got to keep going to the finish line.
Right.
And our example is Jesus.
Ultimately,
Jesus knew his finish line. I do not. That's not fair.
Right. And we talked about running the race on our last podcast, and then you said you can see the finish line. Now you don't know where it's at.
It's a new week.
Yeah.
It moved it. It got moved. It keeps moving.
It's we don't know. Our finish line, looking at life, is our death or the coming of Christ. We don't know. And so that's why we have to run with endurance, which means run with perseverance, run when you're tired. To me, just keep going, right? Just keep going. And that's what, Jesus is the example for us of how he ran his race, right? We see his life. We see his birth until he about 12 years old, and then there's an absence, right, until he could be turned 30 and he's get baptized in the Jordan River. Then he dies, what some say close to 33, or after 3 years of ministry he dies. We don't know exactly if it was 33 years. You feel what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so he dies, but his life in that small time period is the example that he sets for us of how we run this race. And so the writer says, for he is the author and the finisher of our faith. And referring to a race, the author is the one who allows you to start. The finisher is the one who rewards you in the end. So he is the one that allows us to run the race, but he's also the one that gives us the reward at the end of the race. And so we must be able to trust in him and believe in him to help us. Something got me. Was it Jesus?
Ouch, it probably hurt, because I can imagine it's not smooth underneath here. Are you bleeding?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's all good.
Get blood on my table, please.
Should we edit it out?
You screaming into the mic? Yeah, we'll edit it out.
Dang.
Go ahead. Do you want to take care of it?
What was I talking about?
You were talking about running the race and
author and finisher of our faith.
Yeah, author and finisher of our faith. And as you were talking, I remember I did talk about the race in our last podcast about how Jesus is the person at the end, and they wrap you up and all of the race and stuff, and you didn't use it in the sermon. That was great. That was gold. And you didn't use it.
I sure didn't.
No.
I should have.
That was that bow.
But when was that? We did that. That wasn't this week though. The podcast. We did it Wednesday.
We did it Wednesday, so it was after.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna start jumping hook this time.
Appreciate. But Jesus is our example, and like you said, he came knowing the outcome at the outset of the race, that he'll be wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace will be upon him, and by his stripes we shall be healed. He came when he was born, he knew his purpose of birth was dying. And all of us, we know,
This always making noise over here.
What time I got it? All of us, we know, death is inevitable, and so we have to live life to the fullest, to the best of our ability. He endured the cross, despising the shame. That's what the scripture says. That's who we're looking to. We're looking to Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despised the shame, sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And so when we're looking at sitting on the shoulders of giants, we look at the work that they've done, how much they went through to be able to accomplish and complete that work, and then looking at what happened after their work was completed. And so for many of us, we have to continue to move forward. We got to continue the work that our ancestors have started, or continue to work that our fathers or mothers have started, the work of helping others, the work of being there. But Jesus, his mission was to be the example for us as Christians, to live our lives totally dependent upon the Father and focus on doing the work of salvation, that we may be able to see him in all that we do and then honor him with all that we have. And so we run this race of life, and we committed to it without giving up, and there's a reward for our running.
There truly is a reward for our running. Those are all of the questions that I have for you. Do you have any lasting pastoral points for the people?
Yeah, so as we are in Black History Month, let us be intentional about learning about the history, not just if we're Black, but white people or Hispanic people. Also learn about the great attributes of Black people in this nation to allow us to be where we are today. I was talking to someone even today of how we are not too far removed from segregation. We're about 60, almost 65 years removed from Civil Rights Act of 1968, right? And so we're not too far removed from that. And so we're still coming across places in this country that say, oh, that's the first Black something. And we've been in this country for hundreds of years. And so we're thankful for all that God has done for us and how he continues to allow us to thrive, even sometimes under the worst conditions. But we've been able to make things work and be able to do things to be great in America, and not just being dumb, deprived, and dangerous, but also being intelligent, innovative, creatives, businessmen and women, and doing great things to change this world.
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to check back, excuse me, for our next podcast. Check out our website, mtzlife.com, for new content. Thank you to the invention by Dr. James E. West, so that we're able to use these microphones and continue to spread the gospel. So until next time, stay marvelous, fabulous, and blessed. Peace.
Peace. God bless.